Hi, and thanks for joining me today. Today, we're talking about leading in a crisis. The the COVID pandemic, I think, if you were in a position of running a company or leading a company at the time, probably taught us more about leadership and leading in a crisis than just about any time, certainly in my 20 plus years career. And I think, there were a few lessons that really stood out for me. The first one, stop reacting to everything. It was really easy during COVID, but I think in any crisis, there's so much coming at you at once when a crisis hits that it's easy to start reacting to every single thing that's happened. There's so much noise and chatter that's going on around you that really determining where to focus and where not to focus is really essential, because the team is going to react to your reactions. So being able to quiet yourself, quiet your mind, and really stop the knee-jerk reactions are more important than ever. During the time of COVID, we were losing our clients in our software company were airlines and hotels and restaurants. We were losing clients faster than we could certainly sell them. But we were losing clients faster than anything we had ever seen before. We had always really prided ourselves on really high retention. Suddenly that was eroding because our clients couldn't even function anymore. The mental noise that was happening was really deafening. And being able to quiet that and really focus on where we needed to focus to just survive the crisis really became paramount, and allowing a lot of the normal reactions that would be occurring around me to just have to slide. The second is, it's actually a saying that an old friend of mine and a mentor of mine has, and I think it's a great one. It's that communicate until they roll their eyes. And what he meant by that was, a lot of times there's an old marketing axiom that it takes 7 times before somebody even begins to listen to your message, right? And as a leader in a company, it could be far more than that. And that's just to get them to listen. That doesn't mean to actually internalize and take action. But being able to say the same thing over and over again, and be able to do it literally until somebody actually becomes almost annoyed that you're just saying the same thing over, becomes really important to stay on the message that you're trying to deliver, because it is that message in a crisis that is so important to keep the company fully aligned on. My job as a leader was to communicate the long-term vision and keep people focused as this is where we're going. Right now, we're in a storm like we've never seen it, but this is still where we're going. And here are the short-term priorities where we need to focus. So both of those things were really critical, and communicating that over and over and over. Third thing really learned is around setting small goals and hitting them. The big, hairy, there's a term, BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. That didn't last long in a crisis. And it doesn't mean we weren't focused on it for the long term. It just meant that during a crisis, we really needed to bring down the goals to narrow the field of vision where people were focusing, and then go and hit them, however small that they were, because maintaining morale and maintaining motivation was a really important thing. Even if that meant we weren't going to lose more than 30% of our revenue or something like that. These are goals that we never would have imagined before. There's a biological reaction when fear hits, and that's the field of vision narrows, right? We become only focused on what we can directly see in front of us. We've all experienced this biologically. The exact same thing happens in a company, where we've got to narrow the focus, narrow the goals, be able to be myopically focused on small goals that we can really go out and achieve. And what you see, and what we saw, was certainly the team rally in a way that we've never experienced before. We also then had the next lesson we really had to focus on was refocusing on our why, because our why actually became more important than ever, even though in a lot of ways, we weren't able to really see the results. I mean, the why for us as a hiring company was hiring software company was what we referred to as matching people with purpose, putting people in the right jobs. Well, during a pandemic, a lot of our clients were losing people. A lot of our clients were shutting down. They were furloughing people. And where our why was still about matching people with purpose, it really became, we had to narrow that too, to say, here's how we're going to match people with purpose. We're going to do it by trying to help our clients be able to bring in talent when they can reopen again. And it was a narrower vision. It was a narrower subset of our why, but that why was just as mission critical as it ever was before. And the last thing that we really learned, and I shouldn't say the last thing, we learned a lot of lessons that are not covering today, but is really leaning on the culture. What companies in a crisis realize is culture, at the end of the day, is everything that they have. When the company is falling down around itself, and the whole world is in a crisis that we were during the early days of COVID, it was our culture that we relied on for support and for ideas and honestly for escape. It was also our culture that enabled us to lean on it so that we knew our leaders were stressed just as much as our individual contributors. And our leaders realized their job was not to have to lead 100% of the time. We asked leaders to step up for our culture at every level of the company, and they did. Some of the most profound examples of this came from every entry-level roles in the company where leaders emerged and took hold of that culture and made it their own. And our leaders, we rested on that when we needed to rest. In 20 years of leading high growth companies, I've never been prouder of seeing what that team accomplished, but it was because of the culture that we were able to get some rest and be able to keep the company moving and successfully exit COVID. So important lessons, I think, to learn of managing in a crisis. I hope you'll consider subscribing to the Founders Journey podcast, where we talk about lessons like this coming from founders for founders. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, and appreciate you joining me today. I'm Greg Moran from the Founders Journey podcast.